Howdy and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Going to be looking at a somewhat rare Aurora kit from 1958. This is their kitting of the Avro Arrow, the CF-105, a Canadian built interceptor that has a lot of controversy surrounding it. This is kit number 124129, so it had a suggested retail price of $1.29, and it's even included on the box top cover over here, which is a little unusual for Aurora kits. And it's scale-wise, I've seen it listed as both 180 and also as 178th. So, somewhere in that range, typical box scale of the time period. We've got box art by Joe Catula, and his signature is off the top right over here. So, pretty striking artwork with a brown sky and blue purplish hills over this airbase over here. So, pretty neat looking artwork. So the Arrow started out from the RCAF looking for a replacement for the CF-100 Canuck that was just coming into service in 1953. That aircraft had had an extremely protracted development period, and something like 6-7 years from when they finalized the design and it actually entering service. So the Canadian Air Force was a little concerned that as Soviet bomber capabilities was dramatically increasing, that they needed to get on top of the next interceptor, since the Canuck was took so long to get to service, and at the time it was almost pretty much obsolete by the time it came in. So better start working on his replacement. So they started as early as 53. They started out just looking how to improve the Canuck, putting swept wings on it, bigger engines, things like that. And it was increasing the performance somewhat, but just not on the magnitude that they were expecting. They needed to deal with supersonic bombers coming over the pole to bomb Canada. So 1955, the RCAF stipulated a much more powerful aircraft, and they started finalizing the design for the Avro Arrow. There were going to be no prototypes. They're going to go straight into a production line setup using the Cook-Craigie plan, and they were also at the same time developing their own engine as well. They were expecting that if they were able to produce this aircraft to the specifications that they wanted, 50,000 foot altitude, Mach 2 capable, significant range, that it would be purchased by other countries, which would make this an economically viable aircraft. So the first rollout of the Mark 1 was on 4 October of 57. So it took them a couple of years to get the first prototype completed. And that was RL201, which is represented by this kit painting here. This RL200 is a fictitious one. That aircraft did not exist. And so that same date, coincidentally, was the same date as the Sputnik launch. So that will come into play later in the Arrow's life expectancy, or lack of life, I should say. Flight testing began on 25 March of 58. It was ultimately able to achieve a level flight of about Mach 1.9. Some estimates were saying that it might have gotten to 1.98. But the initial prototypes, or not prototypes, but the initial production versions, the first first five, including 201, were powered by Pratt & Whitney J75s, as the Orendo Iroquois, as it was later named, was not ready for production yet. So the Iroquois was going to go into the Mark II version of the Arrow, as a lighter, a little bit more powerful engine. and the sixth production aircraft was going to be that Mark II, and it was nearing the state of it being able to be tested when the whole project was canceled. And that was due to a number of different factors. No orders were coming from the United States or from the UK. UK had come up with their own idea of how to do it because of the protracted development period on this aircraft. Same thing with the US. You already had the F-106 was in service, which was basically kind of doing the same thing. The F-101, and on their design stage, you had the F-103, the F-107, the F-108, were in their design stages, that would have very much surpassed what the Arrow was capable of doing. So Canada was kind of on its own with this, and they spent a lot of money on it, and we're still going to have to spend a lot of money, getting this thing to squadron service. And since the production was going to now be limited to just their own, it was making cost per unit pretty high. Canada was, starting to hurt for money, and was also becoming part of NORAD, and they're going to be integrated into the defense system, and they had to make a choice, either the Arrow, interceptor, or the Beaumark, missile defense system. And at this time, thanks to Sputnik, there was a shift happening from the threat of bombers coming over the pole to intercontinental ballistic missiles, and the Arrow wasn't really going to be able to do a whole lot about that, but the Beaumark had the ability to be able to deal with that. So they chose to invest into the Beaumark as opposed to the Arrow, and they still needed some fighter defense. So they ended up purchasing 66 McDonnell CF-101 Voodoos as replacements for that. There was an offer for the built aircraft to be handed over to the National Research Council of Canada. They rejected it, saying that it wouldn't provide too much usefulness to them because of the lack of spare parts to be able to fly these, to the level that they needed to do the research that they wanted. Same thing with the Royal Aircraft Establishment. They rejected the Arrows for similar reasons. There was a lot of controversy about the fact that there were orders to scrap the aircraft and the tooling. There's some substantiated information showing that the KGB had infiltrated Avro of Canada, and there was substantial spying going on. So there was some serious concern that all the technology and research that had been going into this were going to make their way to the Soviet Union. So the way to make it so they couldn't steal it is, by destroying it all. There were rumors that, an entire airframe was hidden somewhere. That has not been substantiated. A pair of outer wings from one of the aircraft and a nose section of one aircraft somehow survived the scrapping. So those are in existence. A number of mock-ups have been made, like a 60th scale one, and supposedly a 1-to-1 scale mock-up was completed. So you can see something, in the Canadian museums on this. But for the most part, it disappeared shortly after the canceling on February 20th of '59, a date known as Black Friday in Canadian aviation history. So that's a little bit on the Arrow. It's got a lot of hot feelings, particularly from Canadians. So the comment section, if you guys want to hash it out about what really happened with the Arrow, have at it. Try to keep it a little clean and non-political on it, or in reference to today's politics. If you want to talk about the old day stuff, go at it. But that's my take on the Arrow history. So now let's look at the kit itself. So we've got this fantastic artwork by Catula. One thing I noticed is kind of a strange representation of the jet, exhaust coming out here. This one here, the angle of the thrust is going downwards on the backside engine, so kind of secret vectored thrust was being created by Avro back then. But really a neat looking box cover. This is the kind of the mid era of the Aurora logo with the oval, but still having the Aurora Borealis in the background. Got the parents magazine certification on there, and as mentioned before, the price tag. On the side here, we've got a copyright of 58, address in West Hempstead, Long Island, and because of the choice of the color of the artwork, some of the stuff kind of gets lost on here. This side, similar again. On the end, repeat of the top box art. And we've got the kit number 124 with the 129 price extension. And similar on this end. So you open up the box, we've got glued on the lithograph, slick, wrapped around, glued down on the hard box. This kit contains a insert here for a dream kit contest, which was people to mail in suggestions of what kind of kit they'd like to see next, and you could win some prizes, 300 prizes, including a car, a new Skoda 440 America. So get yourself a European car there, or boats and tape recorders and records, but no model kits. You think, model kit contest, you'd have model kits as prizes, but nope. So here we have our instruction sheet, typical fold open from Aurora. So we've got, effectively an exploded, view of the kit, showing you where some decal placements are. And, there's not much to it, so don't have a lot there. Your steps are listed here. Looks like landing gear assembly is probably the most complex part here. And you've got add for their enamels, their speed dry. Some more decal placement and painting. This looks like a photograph of the actual kit itself. Plug for their glue. History of the CF-105 at the time. And the backside is completely devoted to all their other products, including full list of the kits, popular 30s planes, HO scale accessories. So there you have your instructions. Who had this kit before had cut out a photograph from a magazine of the Arrow. I'll try to use that as a reference. And here are the decals, printed on an orange background, which is a little different. And they're still in pretty good shape. They show a little bit of yellowing on there. It's harder to see with the orange background, but they're still in pretty good shape. And this is of the actual first rollout aircraft, 201. And which is actually represented by this photograph as well here. And show you some images of that specific Arrow. Okay, now we'll take a look at the plastic. Molded in white makes it easy. So it's the prototype aircraft for all in white. So this is pretty smooth, slick surface. There's not much detail going on. There's a little bit of raised paneling line work on there. Some engraved panel lining, and then we do have raised marking locations. Nothing on the interior side, and slot for stand. And here's the other half, similar again. You can see a little bit of swirling going on, kind of almost marbleizing of the plastic, this white plastic. So it's kind of neat looking. Again, the molded on markings. Then we have our wings. These are one-piece solid. Got just blank area here for the landing gear, molded on markings, and engraved lines for the ailerons, or elevons, I guess you could call them, and flaps, I guess. And here's the top side, molded on marking again. A little bit of raised panel lining across the top here. You can see that, yeah. But solid piece of plastic. Same thing with this wing. Pretty much the same. Big dog tooth there. It's a vertical stabilizer. Same thing, one piece. Again, molded on raised markings. Got some pitot probes here. And some engraved panel lining on this for the rudder and a little bit of other stuff. And let's take a look. Here are our splitter fence pieces. There's some detail on that. Our tail cone. Not much to that. Our nose cone. And stuff for the tail area. Underside. And then a few little detail pieces. Here's our landing gear. Fairly simple. Some gear doors, wheels. Very simplified wheels. And here's their intakes. Not much to those. And there's our nose. And then our base. Typical triangle base from mid-period Aurora kits. And here is the clear piece for the canopy. It's got a nice ejector pin mark right in the middle of it. You can see that there, which then shows, of course, to the outside. A lot of this is going to be painted over, but part of that ejector pin does show onto the side window there. So it's fairly thick plastic. And that's it. So there's your Arrow. So this was the only kit available of an Arrow for a long time, for about 30 years. You want to build an Arrow, you got to get one of these. And Aurora issued it a few times. Probably wasn't a big seller since the Arrow was, not a built aircraft, so sales probably weren't that good, which may, attribute to the not many issues on it. So they did another issue in 60, another one in 64, slight revision in the boxes, mainly the price extensions and a little bit of detail information. And then finally there was a 64 issue with Aurora Canada. And that was it. That was the end of the line of the Aurora Arrows and the end of your ability to buy any Arrow kits. As far as other makers, Hobbycraft of Canada produced new Arrow kits in both 48 and 72nd scale. Supposedly there's some issues with those kits as well, but hey, now you get a real scale or contemporary scale kit, and those came out in 1987, so almost 30 years from the time this one came out. They both got reissues in 99 and 2003. Idea of Korea did an issue of the 72nd scale one in 99. And Hobbycraft also developed a new tool in 2012 of the 72nd scale size. So I guess they addressed some of the shape issues that they had on their earlier ones. There were a couple of vacuform kits in 72nd scale in the 80s. Astra and VP of Canada both produced vacuform kits in the 80s. And more recently, there's been a couple of 1/144 scale kits, Mini Wing of Czechoslovakia, and then Triple Nuts from Japan in the 2000s for both of those in 1/44 scale. So you got a few other choices to build an arrow if you are so inclined. And you don't want to shell out the big bucks that these things are running nowadays. Well, that's about it for this one. If you've built one of these, tell us about it in the comments section. If you got one sitting on your shelf, absolutely take a picture of that, send it in. The email address is in the channel description so we can share it in our next viewer build video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.